seem to have a romantic notion of the 70s film industry.
Yeah,
Um, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit, but part of my impression is, in a way, the film industry just moved at a greater speed, you know? Film projects took a lot less time, it seems to me. They're just
yeah,
kind of throwing money at projects and just letting people, do their thing. And nowadays, film projects take so long and there's so much planning and making sure that, you get the maximum return on investment and that sort of thing. So,
yeah,
what do you
yeah,
think of that?
and well, I just yeah, I mean, um, yeah, and I think there's a lot of reasons why movies take so long to get made. I mean, they always have, especially independent films, but it kind of is a miracle to me. Like anything gets done
Yeah.
when you look at the just the complications involved, and you're relying on so many other people in the process of making a movie. Um, how and inevitably it's just it's things are going to fall through inevitably. So it's like a miracle how anything gets done. Um, I don't, I mean, raising money for an independent film to me is like the most. It's like winning a lottery or something.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, just the amount of circumstances and miracles that have to just keep coming together in order for in order to make it happen, and then eventually get it released if you're lucky. It's just
Mm.
astonishing um how it happened, because I've never, I still have not been able to raise. I mean, every movie I've made is just out of pocket.
Mm. Yeah. I was really struck by, if you remember on the video I made, we kind of had a comment back and forth about, um well, I commented on the more recent AI project stuff you've been working on, and um yeah, you talked about how the primary motivating factor for that is,
Yeah,
just how expensive it is to make anything really,
yeah,
with live action actors and that sort of thing.
yeah,
Um and I mean, I really do sympathize with that. And um it's a bit of a paradoxical thing because, it's so much tougher to make a film without any budget, and especially to make it, to imbue it with qualities that people find
yeah,
attractive. Because I think your films draw very certain, sort of, like, I don't know, they have a certain quality that I really enjoy. And in a way, that's the sort of thing that you wouldn't be able to make with a budget, simply because, you know, the funds aren't there necessarily for those sorts of film projects. Maybe they were in, I don't know, the 70s or
yeah,
something. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that and yeah, and for so many other reasons. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's I don't know. It's a yeah, a very difficult situation, and you're always stricken with so many. I mean, people tend to have different opinions on this, but um, without proper funding, you're dealing with a lot of limitations that I just don't feel it's worth going through the effort through. I mean, if I have a few $1,000s to make a live action film that that can only involve a few non-professional actors in one location or easily accessible locations. It just there's nothing really that interesting to me about any of that.
Mm.
It's not I guess it can apply to some things, but especially if you're inspired to, I mean, I managed to make Reflections of, although Reflections of Evil still had $100,000 budget, I couldn't
Right.
have, so uh it was still I needed a budget to do that.
Hmm.
Um, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends. I don't want to mention anything specifically because I want to offend anyone's. I mean, I have a lot of friends who make films on a micro budget scale, and
Hmm.
they're. Um, I wouldn't want them to hear this, but they're all pretty terrible movie. I mean, they're pretty unwatchable,
Mm.
and I think in just about every case, if they had more money, if they had
Hmm.
a decent budget to hire some good actors, get some good look, et cetera, they definitely would have been a lot better, more watchable, and in some cases quite good. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, it's I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just you don't have the money. It's just nothing, don't do it.
Well, what I find interesting is, I find that your films, even the AI ones, how sort of incorporate this theme into the work itself, where it's like this sort of um, not only can independent filmmakers not really get budgets in America, but it's almost like a kind of like your work is responding to this state of Hollywood and the American film industry, the independent film industry, and I don't know. I feel like especially your editing style, is partially parodying things that are tropes that are used in Hollywood filmmaking, but it's also
Hmm.
sort of like trying to show how much more can be done with editing, if that makes sense. Because I think of your films as kind of maximalist in their
Hmm.
usage of sound effects and visuals and digital effects.
Hmm. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, sure. I agree. Okay.
Well, relating to that, so Reflections of Evil and I assume some of the earlier short films were shot on film,
Yeah.
and I'm under the impression that like for Reflections of Evil that you had film scans and then
Yeah.
edited it digitally still.
Yeah.
Um
And actually there was actually some digital in it. I mean, it was
mhm.
90 some odd percent 16 millimeter. Uh there was some Super 8 in it. Well, maybe it was like 85% 16, 10% Super 8 and 5% digital. There was some digital high 8 in the last act. um, which was shot at the amusement parks at Magic Mountain and Universal Studios. And that was when I didn't plan on that, but when we were doing all this guerrilla shooting inside there, I would bring in as much film as I could carry, as much 16 or Super 8 or whatever it was. And then if I ran out, I would switch to the digital 8 camera
Hmm.
and shoot more footage because I just, was just shooting tons of stuff.
Yeah.
So it ended up, a lot of the usable footage I had was on digital 8. But also the other reason was I had a Steadicam which I could only use with the digital 8 camera. Just the weight on it. I didn't have a camera that was balanced right, a film camera that was balanced right for the Steadicam. And it was just too difficult to do that with the steady. So, and I wanted a lot of Steadicam shots inside the park.
Hmm.
So, and also there was the ET adventure, which was too dark to shoot on film, and I tried. I went in there testing out, 800 speed film and different lenses, ultra high fast. I didn't plan on shooting it. I wanted it on film, but ultimately it just had to be with the digital 8 camera with the night vision on it, which gave it this weird look. But that was the only way to do it. Actually, kind of it bugs me when I think about that, just on a technical standpoint, because I was using a model of the digital 8 camera that the night vision had this weird glitch in it where it put this little square in the middle of the image, and then they came out with a
Hmm.
newer model of that camera, literally the same year I was shooting. I think it was already out, and I didn't realize it. I could have gotten it. I had the money
Hmm.
that got rid of that effect and improved the night vision because night vision was still kind of a new thing for digital
Hmm.
at that time. Um, and I was kicking myself like, oh, I could have had better night vision. Anyhow, but that was the only way to shoot that scene inside the ET adventure.
Yeah, that is very interesting. So the pre-Reflections of Evil short films and stuff, was any of that actually, analog editing and splicing
Oh
things and
yeah, oh yeah. For
yeah.
years, I mean, for over 20 years. I mean, all the Super 8 films I made, going
Yeah.
back to the early 80s. I
Right.
don't know if you've
Right.
seen any of those. Like the last one I did was the early 70s horror trailer in the late
Yes.
90s, and the one before that was Apple, Made in Hawaii, this fantasy film, and before that, Dawn of an Evil Millennium, the late 80s, and then other stuff going back to the early 80s. Yeah, it was all I would cut the film physically. I had one physical print. I'd cut it physically and dub it, mix it through a projector, a sound on sound, very crude sort of mix on a projector.
Mm.
That was the only way to make movies for years. Now, starting in the 90s, I think starting with Apple, I did some, since I cut that into a trailer, I was starting to use you know well, at that time there was Avid and Media 100, and I can't remember excuse me, I can't remember when Premiere came out, sometime in the late 90s, but
Mm.
I started hiring an operator with a Media 100 to do some post work on Apple for the trailer, and did the same thing with the early 70s horror trailers. So I was already starting to, you know, use I don't know if that was still tape editing, but it was like it was a non-linear, like the Avid.
Right.
Um, anyhow, but yeah, and then the early 2000s, and Final Cut Pro came along, and
Hmm.
home computers that were strong enough at that time, at least to work in standard definition, to cut, to do your own complicated edits and sound mixes.
Right.
It's too bad high def didn't. Even in the early 2000s, like it was, everything was standard def was still the default. I mean, it was still, there really wasn't any high def transferring facilities, although it was in use. I know they were using it on some TV shows, 720p, and I think maybe even
Mm.
1080p was around but only for, it was very expensive, and only for high budget shows. If you want, if you shot something 16 millimeter, it was all standard def, and it would it would generally transfer to like a Beta SP or a Digi Beta as your
Mm.
master. Although I was making a lot of different master. I mean, I was making a lot of different backups. I had Beta SP, and then did I have Digi Beta? Yeah, I think I had Digi Beta masters, and then I was getting a lot of stuff transferred to Mini DV, and then capturing from Mini DV, because I liked
Mm.
all these different formats that were coming out. I was buying all that
Yeah.
stuff, um, Digital Aid did Mini DV, and I don't know, there's something about, I like the quality that I got out of transferring from to directly to Mini DV, and then transferring that directly into Final Cut Pro into the
Mm.
computer. I found it was just the best quality, better than like a Beta SP direct into the computer, because I bought a Beta SP deck to do that. Um, yeah. So, you had to have the money to do all that stuff even at that time.
Yeah, I was just curious about kind of your history with editing software, which you touched on quite a bit. Because I feel like a lot of your films are exploring types of editing that really, I feel like a good deal of it kind of was only possible through digital editing software. Um, and I was curious about, do you feel I f
That could be, although I tend to think that, everything, yeah, I mean, um, I still prefer, the movies were, I mean, there was a lot of sophisticated editing going on in the analog era.
oh
Uh,
yes. Yeah.
and I just don't think like there is anything that the digital era brought convenience to everything.
Yeah.
It brought this, and a lot of filmmakers and directors, oh, thank God, it was about time. I'm so, I can't stand working with all the limitations of film. And I understand that definitely, but
Hmm.
there was definitely a discipline aspect to film that made you work differently in so many different ways. And it rubbed off on the movie. Um, I just don't know if there's anything in the digital era that you could do that you couldn't do in the analog era. I think we kind of reached a peak at some point. Um, but in the 80s probably, of what you could do. And it's funny because when I think about, when digital editing, like in the early 2000s, was suddenly available to everyone, we were getting these. Well, this started with, even earlier in the 90s, because filmmakers who had money to work with, there were Avid systems and other things that were professionally available. So I think it started probably around the mid, maybe even the early 90s. I mean, it dates back before that. They were experimenting with nonlinear editing in the early 80s. Lucasfilm had developed like a laser disc system, and Francis
Mm,
Coppola was like working on trying to market his own version of something like an early, I think just by the 90s it was feasible,
hmm,
and you started seeing the effects of that, like with the Tony Scott, for example, the kind of editing that Tony Scott started getting into. Think about this sort of montagey. It's like playing around with everything you could do suddenly in that
yeah.
world. um, and adding like titles and credits and and on-screen text and things like that. He was really going crazy with that. That to me kind of represents what was happening at the beginning of the digital editing era, like the kind of thing that Tony Scott was doing, and then you saw it in other things.
Yeah.
Um, there was this movie that strangely, it's this little weird independent film that, of all people, what's his name? The actor directed, Anthony Hopkins
Hmm.
directed this independent movie called Slipstream in the
Hmm.
early 2000s, which it's just completely bizarre, very obscure. I don't think it had a release. I don't know. I think composed the music for it, but
Oh.
it's like such an example of like him going crazy with whatever he was. I don't know if he was using Final Cut Pro or Avid or Premiere. I don't know, but it was like, to me, it was like him going crazy with what you could do with that. This sort of playing around with speeds
Hmm.
and all that kind of thing, the effects that were available that were just so easy to use at the time. And excuse me, what David Lynch was doing
Hmm.
with the Twin Peaks revival seemed
Hmm.
like the effect of he was, because he likes to play around with experimental editing, and so it had an effect on his editing as well. There's nothing that beats just a well edited movie. Uh,
Hmm.
a good, solid, well edited movie. Like a John Borman film or something like that.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe there's nothing you can't necessarily do that you can't do on film, which I think that's pretty agreeable. But there's almost sort of a level of kind of obsessive like overdubbing and like layering of
Yeah,
videos and stuff that I
yeah,
mean you could do it with film, but with digital it's so much more possible, more accessible to do that.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
I actually was doing that kind of stuff on film
mhm,
with early crude film equipment,
right.
but with kind of clunky results,
Mm.
imperfect results. But
Yeah, that is what I find striking about some of your earlier short films is it does kind of feel like it has that um like ADHD kind of editing which I can think of some examples of that that are like earlier and I guess mostly 70s perhaps some
yeah,
Japanese films like Obayashi and that sort of thing. But
yeah. I know. I mean, there's always some earlier example of something amazing that they did, before they had any kind of, just physically cutting film and
mm,
for, I mean, God, for years, I mean, I was cutting Super 8 film, and sometimes without the aid of a viewer.
mm,
Normally when you cut film, you have a viewer, you advance it frame by frame, and then you mark your frames. And I remember there
Hmm.
were periods like when I made the early 70s horror trailer, and I think even the Cut the Apple trailer, I didn't have a viewer, or something was wrong with the viewer or something, and I had to just physically eyeball the tiny frames on Super 8
Wow.
is tiny, and just knew where to cut just by physically looking at the frames. Yeah, and just did it all like that. Just knew where I wanted to cut it. I mean, after a while, you get so, familiar with film frames and,
Mm.
and motion and all that. Yeah. But still, if you screw something up, and it's not like you're working with a work print where you have a negative to go back to. You have one positive print. If you screw something up, and I usually didn't have a lot of takes to work with, so
Mm.
that's it.
Yeah.
There's no, there's no going back. I had to get it perfect the first time. But yeah, it wasn't really too much of a problem actually.
Mm.
The biggest nuisance probably was just the physical splice marks on the film, which were difficult to get rid of. At least, if you're working with Super 8, you have one positive print, you have to physically splice the film. That's the way it's going to look. You can't, you're not doing like cement splice. Well, even cement splices are visible. If you've ever seen a work print of a movie, of a Hollywood movie,
Hmm.
you'll see cement splices. You can even see them sometimes in release prints.
Hmm.
If the film was framed wrong, or you'll still see cement splices. But by the time the movie is reprinted and cropped and everything, the splices are invisible. Because you're going from a cut negative, so the negative cutter takes the, you know, um, edit decision list and
Mm.
cements each one together, and so it makes all the cuts mostly invisible.
Yeah,
That
that's
always bugged me though. Just like visible splice marks always bothered me.
oh
So
yeah.
I remember going to a couple of advanced screenings, test screenings in the 80s. I remember going to one of
Mm.
Rambo 2,
Hmm.
and it was the movie was finished. It was all mixed and everything, and the audience was loving it. They were going crazy, but it was a print. It was some sort of a work printer. I don't know, something where you could see all the cement splices. You could see all the splice, and that drove me crazy. I couldn't
Hmm.
stand it. But anyhow, yeah.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it is the only print. So I guess this is more from an archival perspective, but yeah. Um, but that's, I guess, yeah, the studio should have known better. Um, well, so to talk a little bit about, we've talked a bit about some of your feelings towards Hollywood and that sort of thing. And your films contain a few different satirical, I guess I'd call them, depictions of
Uh-huh.
Spielberg and George Lucas and these sorts of uh, film school movement filmmakers from the 70s. Um, and I'm curious about, I sort of get the impression from watching your films through that those films were inspiring to you, Lucas's films and Spielberg's films and that sort of thing. When you were younger, and maybe they still are to some extent. Um, but yeah, I'm curious about um, how do you really feel about those sorts of films? Do you feel when you watch a Spielberg film from the 80s, do you enjoy watching those films anymore, or is it
Sure.
hard to, yeah, how do you feel about
Oh
that?
no, it was all, yeah. Uh yeah, no, I mean, well, early Spielberg was very inspiring,
Hmm.
for sure. Um 70s, early 80s Spielberg, that was try to get a picture here. That was, yeah, a very inspiring era. So no, I love what the heck was that? No, I love early Spielberg. Uh Up until a point. I think it was around, the late 80s, early 90s when I think it was Hook was the first one that
Hmm.
I saw that was like, wow, that was pretty bad. Even though there are things I kind of like about that movie, really, John Wayne score and things like, uh yeah, but um But no, I love early Spielberg
Hmm.
and Lucas, the first three, the original Star Wars trilogy, and the films he did, American Graffiti and THX. Everything after that was awful.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, a lot of it has to do with it's a lot of it is factored around the times of when these pieces of creativity were made, because it's all creativity. There was so much of it happening in so many different areas, and so many artists were doing great things, and music and everything, and film and all sorts of. So a lot of that had to do with the era that it was
Hmm.
created in. Yeah, and so it's interesting, the consciousness and the creative energies that existed. They were shifting and changing all the time, and we were on this wave starting in the '60s that continued through the '70s and into the '80s somewhat, and then by the late '80s, in my mind, in my view, it just plunged dramatically, and it became very commercial and no risks, and the corporate sort of takeover was
Hmm.
going strong. So the yuppie fear thrillers were so it was so
Yes.
popular at that time. It was all about corporate power and money. Uh,
I also think of the 70s as my favorite film decade, pretty generally.
yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, as
there's
far as like it's a preference, I guess, of aesthetics.
mm,
Every every era has its own. Some people like films from the '30s and '40s
right.
more. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like the aesthetics of that era. I like films from the '30s and '40s too.
Hmm.
It was a much better era. I mean, it was all about story then. It was they were very kind of there was a certain way you made movies for years, and they didn't go out on location much, and the
Hmm.
equipment was too bulky, or and so everything was shot in a studio, and but it was all everything was there were no gimmicky, it was no special effects or any of that. It was all character and story, and so everything leaned on that, and the talent that was around. We had much better actors in
Hmm.
those days. The first 80 years of the 20th century.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so it's the aesthetics changed. We moved into this. Well, now we moved into this like video game sort of
Mm.
aesthetic, and um, I mean, we're still in the video game aesthetic. I mean, there was never anywhere to go beyond that, I guess.
I agree with that. I've noticed yeah, a certain sense of kind of video game logic in films that maybe aren't even supposed to be based on video games and that sort of thing. And
Yeah,
um um it does seem to me like film is kind of I and maybe I'm just biased because I'm a film person, but I do think of cinema as like the predominant medium of the 20th century. It's so important to the history of the 20th century, and maybe that's just not the case for the 21st century. Um, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. But
oh yeah. Wait, repeat that again. I'm sorry.
well, just I do feel like film was the dominant medium of the 20th century in terms of, I mean, a lot of people read and that sort of thing as well, of course, but I feel like if we're talking about what influenced popular culture, the way people think about things, even popular music, which was so influential, a lot of that music gets communicated through film for a lot of people as well. So, but perhaps film isn't the predominant medium in the nowadays. Maybe it's losing its place. I don't know
Yeah,
if
I
you.
think so. It didn't. Yeah, it's no longer the. Oh yeah, no, it hasn't been the dominant art form. I don't think in a while.
Mm,
Um, I mean, I've heard a lot of other directors say that too. That it's no
hmm.
longer. I mean, it's true. it's no longer the center of culture. I mean, it was a big deal at one point. There are too many other things now. I mean, everything, it's in the internet era. I don't know what is, but
Hmm.
yeah. I mean, I'm surprised cinema is even still around
Hmm.
to some degree. I mean, that theaters still exist, and that style, that form of storytelling is still like a profitable. It's becoming less profitable. It seems like all the time. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it just seems kind of yeah, antiquated now. In the TikTok era. I don't know, but what?
I am really intrigued by the fact that you've put some of these short films together in anthologies, which obviously is more common with horror anthologies, and you're kind of playing off of that with the way these have been released, at least on like platforms like Tubi. Um, but I was curious what your thinking of with that was, because I found that I really enjoyed them and almost wish that more independent filmmakers would put their short films together in anthology films like that.
Now, are you
Kind of.
talking specifically about the ones that are on Tubi that are packaged together as anthologies, or
Yeah, yeah, like
that was done by the distributor? Actually, that was his idea. I put
oh,
those together.
interesting.
He since he wanted to, yeah, I mean, he offered to buy all those, but he wanted 90 minutes or 2 hours of content,
Hmm.
so we just put them together. I think they were just two anthologies, Dawn. They were pretty shoddy, sort of designed anthologies, and those covers, and but whatever, um, yeah, that's how that came about. That was the distributor's idea.
Okay, yeah. It's interesting. I found it like a very easy way to access your filmography, so it was pretty nice.
Oh, really? Huh. Yeah, I didn't think anyone was looking at that stuff. Yeah, huh. That's interesting. I felt it would probably be better if they were separated. Dawn of Eden, all that stuff was separated as short films on a platform. But yeah, I mean, yeah, because I mean, I think there's an abridged version of the Star Wars mockumentary that's in there,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
and which is funny because that's so. I mean, I don't know how that got away with getting, I mean, that's, it's so under the radar. No one's looking at it. I mean, something like that. I mean, there's a lot of offensive footage in that, and how that got away with getting on Tubi, I don't know.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering that too.
Just because it's so under the radar. It's hidden
Yeah,
in it's hidden as a compilation of shorts no one's looking at. So
maybe that's the magic of the compilation film. You can stick things in there. But yeah, getting back to the films, I was a little bit curious about, we talked about the fact that you used to shoot on film,
yeah.
and that well, I saw that you recently uploaded a 4K transfer of Dawn of
Yeah,
an Evil
Dummy and
Millennium.
Millennium. And I still have to upload yeah, some of the earlier stuff, Afterlife and
Hmm.
Amazing Stories. I still have some others. I have to, there's some sections of that I never even released on DVD that were transferred, and I'm gonna have to
Hmm.
figure out how I'm gonna restore the sound because the sound transfer is not very good on the
Hmm.
they did what they could. They actually did it really. I mean, I was surprised they got as much information they could from those old, sound stripes on the film, um but yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to restore the sound on those. The Dawn of an Evil Millennium one I took from like a DVD. I kind of fixed up the sound a little in later years in the DVD era. So I just used that as the new sound master for Dawn. Um,
And what was the process for getting this transfer done? Is it at just like service that does film transfers or
Well, they offered to a friend of mine who works at the Academy offered to do that years ago, actually.
Hmm.
They were trying to do that back in I think 2018 in order to for a film fest or for what was it for? I can't remember now because I remember the guy who works at the Academy invited me to Germany for to the Oberhausen Film Fest where they wanted to show some of my Super 8 films, and he was trying to get a hold of those prints so they could archive them at the Academy at that time, and I misplaced them or temporary. Yeah, I'd lost them. I thought they
Hmm.
were gone for good. I can't. But yeah, I found the remnants of them. I mean, finally got them to him after long delayed after so many years. Um, so that's how that came about.
Oh.
They were offering to do that as well at AGFA.
Hmm.
And I remember I sent them the print when I'd found it years before and they didn't do anything with it. So then they sent it back to me.
Hmm.
And then I lost it temporarily for a while and then found it.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, that's how that came about.
Yeah. I was curious, since my background's in film preservation, I wanted to say that, or I just put the idea of your in your mind of if you have film prints of sending them to film archives, but it sounds like that's on your radar already. So that makes me happy to hear.
Yeah, I mean, at least like there was, I mean, wow, finally after so many years, I'm so bad about hanging on to things, and I'd wish I was a little more careful about just hanging on to those Super 8 prints. But at least I think most of the stuff did finally get it. I mean, unfortunately a lot of Apple was lost, but
Hmm.
um, that print got kind of. I mean, it started off as a 30-minute version, then I cut it into a trailer, and so I had all these different
Hmm.
reels of footage that was all um, it was just in chaos. So, and I don't really, what's out there is fine. I mean, it's not like any great lost masterpiece or anything. Uh, and Dawn, unfortunately, the last 20 minutes of that was missing from the print they had, or was it the last 15? Yeah, last 15 or 20 minutes, I think. I don't know. I have no idea how that happened or what happened with that at all, but at least
Hmm.
half of it is, you know, has a
Wow.
nice transfer, and the rest of it is the old transfer from the DVD. Um,
That looked very good.
the early stuff is actually even better condition. The stuff that I haven't posted yet, the earlier films I made going back to 80, 82, 83, 84. Well, let's
Hmm.
see. Actually, most of it was from 84, 80. Yeah, I don't know, early to mid 80s. Yeah, that actually held up. It looks really good. The colors and it's mostly Kodachrome 40
Hmm.
film stock. Um, it's interesting. He was able to tell me the exact year of the film and processing based on the code on
Yeah, the edge code.
the edge code. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I was thinking, oh yeah, that's when I brought the film into such and such, and 1984, 1986. And he was wondering how I did some of the I remember I had a couple of reels where I did some A and B roll printing where I took it to Yale Labs and they did because I wanted double exposures over things. And um, although I had a backwinder as well, so I was always doing backwinding effects. But
Hmm.
Super 8, you could buy these backwinders, and so you could do your own double exposures. So I was
Hmm.
always messing around with that to do composites or split screens or things like that.
Oh, that's very interesting.
But at least, yeah, at least what survived is, has made it to the 4K era. Anyways, unfortunately, all the raw negative for Reflections of Evil is gone. But
Hmm.
it wouldn't have mattered if that stuff had survived, or at least or mostly survived, because it would all had to have been reconstructed. There was no cut negatives, so it would have all had to been re-edited. It wouldn't
Oh
have
man.
that would
Yeah.
have never happened. So all it would have been good for is maybe to transfer some reels and look at how nice it looked in 4K, but it would just be unedited footage. So, um, the big deal of that is, I mean, the movie was mixed media. Ultimately, it was mostly 16, some Super 8, and some Digital 8, and
Hmm.
all edited in Final Cut Pro, the very first version of Final Cut Pro in 2002, using a early 2002, maybe late 2001. I don't know. It was the fastest Mac that was available at the time. It was the G4 Dual 800,
Hmm.
800 megahertz G4.
Again, I'm glad to hear that being there's scans being done. Sad to hear about the original negatives being lost. I mean, I know that's tough to reconstruct and everything, but yeah, we do. I do think negatives are good to preserve, anyways. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I know. I should have figured. I don't know. I had to figure out what to do with them, as they were. I don't know. My landlady was complaining about them taking up space or something, and
hmm.
uh, I don't remember. I should have figured out something, but
Well, with those negatives for that film, I'm sure it was quite a few reels.
yeah, it was a lot. Well, not only the negatives, there were uh not just the negatives, but the Beta SP and the I had Beta SP masters of everything, backups, and also mini DV and I think Digi Beta
Mm.
masters. I had multiple sort
Wow.
of tape format backups of things. Yeah, I mean there was nothing I could do with it. I was moving around and I didn't have any space to it was literally yeah, it was just a lack of space to store these things long term. I think at one point I did move them into like a shed or something, and then it rained. I don't know what happened to them after that. And there was a big rain one season. They must have all got, I think it all got flooded or something. I don't know.
Oh wow.
I mean, worse things have happened with the big studios. They've had fires and lost master tapes and things to,
Yeah.
hundreds of classic movies. And, Universal Studios has had all these fires over the years where they've lost masters for, hundreds of amazing things. So,
Oh yeah. Well, especially in the era of nitrate foam. So,
yeah, and
things are
all
catching
that
on fire
stuff.
all
Think
the
of all that
time.
stuff.
Yeah. Um,
It's
it-
amazing, there's still so much that exists from that era, from the silent era. And I mean, because I would think most of that would be, long deteriorated or gone, or
yeah. Um,
I guess most of it is really when you think about the sheer volume of movies that were made in the first 20 years of the film industry, before talkies, before the 1930s.
mhm.
Most of that stuff is probably gone, right? I mean, there's only like
Yeah, the majority of it. Yeah.
a handful of things that survived.
Yeah. It is really sad to think about all the stuff that was lost. I mean, the typical statistic that's used is that 90% um pre-1930s was lost. I think that might be slightly exaggerated, but
90%?
yeah.
Yeah. No, I believe it.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, not just in America too, just anywhere,
Right,
pretty
right,
much. Yeah,
exactly.
because there weren't any film archives. There wasn't any real plan to store the films.
Right.
Um,
I'm glad, there's so much effort being made. I mean, yeah, I mean, it is important for these things to be preserved. It's like erasing history. Like, what does it matter? Like all these things that, well, I mean, all these sort of works of art and things that were created through time, if they're lost forever, uh, yeah, there's no memory of them. Like, what did any of it ever matter to anyone or anything? Because they're all lost to distant memories. So once everyone dies off, does any of it uh, even matter?
Yeah. I mean,
Well, I think of that in terms of a lot of things, but like physical possessions, for example. I've never been into collecting things, or
hmm.
'cause I just figure, well, what does it matter? I'm not gonna, I'm gonna just die any day. So what does it matter if I have all these collectible items that don't mean anything?